The Burma military coming with a speed and a force I've never seen, supported by China and Russia.
This is about China's relationship to the entire region and the entire world, because what they're trying to do via their relationship with Myanmar is making themselves invulnerable.
Point blank, 2 meters, just looking at each other in the eye, shooting him. He shot me, I killed him.
How did a country descend into this hellhole state?
Before it was what I'd call low intensity conflict. It's that way no more. It's all out war.
America, is it involved, paying attention? Can it influence the outcome?
He's alive for like maybe 1 minute, pouring blood. So I'm dragging his body, playing circles, and comes back and lines up on me again. A government that will do to its own people what China does, how much are they going to care about Australians or Americans or Filipinos or Thais? Nothing.
Oh, I think Australia is enormously vulnerable. John, I think people here are incredibly naive about what China's motives really are.
This conversation is one of the most extraordinary I've ever conducted with a truly remarkable Australian, a truly remarkable American, and the story of a truly troubled country and a war which should be worrying every one of us who values freedom. David Eubank is a former US Special Forces soldier who spent nearly 30 years on the front lines of some of the world's worst wars. He's the founder of the Free Burma Rangers. Sean Turnell is an Australian economist and former economic policy advisor to State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi in Myanmar. He spent 650 days in a Myanmar prison and wrote about the experience in his book, An Unlikely Prisoner, How an Eternal Optimist Found Hope in Myanmar's Most Notorious Jail. I really encourage you to listen right to the end of this, because all the way through there are insights and information that is really interesting and very important. Sean and Dave, thanks so very much for joining us. This is a pretty serious topic. Let's come, first of all, just a bit of a description, because not a lot of people have ever really focused, that's part of the problem, on Myanmar. Many of them still think it's still called Burma. It's bordered by China and by India. That's very significant. It was, when it was ruled by the British, the second wealthiest country in Southeast Asia. It's now, and I've been there, it's grinding poverty. It's deeply divided, 60-odd ethnic groupings. The infrastructure's terrible. I met a university student in Yangon who wanted to go home to see his parents, and he said it would take 2 weeks in one country because of the physical infrastructure issues and what have you. Hard for us to relate to, but a very important place in humanitarian and geopolitical terms. Tell us a little bit briefly about how you see Myanmar. You both know it well.
John, thank you for your interest in it. And as you said, Myanmar or Burma is one of those countries that we really should know a lot more about. So it's 53 million people. It was one of the richest countries in Southeast Asia. After World War II, it was the country that everyone said would be first to catch up to the developed world. But instead, it's now the poorest country in ASEAN, and by a big margin. Since the coup took place on the 1st of February 2021, that very poor country has lost half of its GDP. So it was always poor, but of course, up until relatively recent times, it was growing, and there was a lot of optimism that it might be able to catch up again, but this military coup has really set it back. So has terrible poverty rates, terrible rates of people who are homeless and displaced, and of course the country is covered in warfare, which is instigated by the military regime that took over. So I'm afraid it's a disaster, but it's one of those countries. Its natural attributes suggest it should be a rich country. It should be a pleasant place to live. And of course, it's anything but that.
Sean, the book that you wrote, An Unlikely Prisoner, the strapline with it, as I recall, was How an eternal optimist found hope in Myanmar's most notorious jail. Most of us would have an absolute dread of being in jail in a third world country. Not that I want to sound disparaging about the Myanmar people, but what was it like, and what was the key to your optimism?
So I was someone who hadn't even got a parking ticket, right? So, and then, the idea that me, this sort of mild-mannered academic from Sydney, Australia, would end up in one of Asia's most notorious jails, amongst drug traffickers and murderers and so on around me, etc., is just, unbelievable. How I got through it was, I mentioned before, just the love and help of the Burmese people. That's number one. I think closely with that is the support of my family, my wife, the incredible efforts that they did. So I was sort of inspired by all of that. I was also supported by a great inner faith, and there was moments of profound faith for me during the whole experience. The final thing, John, and this gets to something you mentioned earlier, actually, mate, which is the story of old heroes and old stories. I grew up reading stories about Colditz Castle, The Great Escape, the Battle of Britain. Whenever I was feeling particularly down, I summoned up that theme music for the old movie, The Battle of Britain, which I think came out in 1968. I used to try and rev myself up through that. But it was sort of through old heroes that I grew up with, remembering their stories, in particular from the Prisoner of War books. I really sought out what I could remember from them, but from them, I think above all, I thought, I don't want to be that person who lets the side down, who fails, lets down his mates, dobs people in, or whatever it was. So, old literature was really important to me. And then also, after a time, some books were brought into me. And so I just, absorbed all of them. Things like very popular books like Lord of the Rings, for instance, that was really meaningful to me. But also many other stories of, heroic endeavor. So that's why I think basically heroic actions were incredibly important. And for me, something to live up to. So in, very real time, I was trying to live up to ideals, I guess, that I had as a kid, but, I'd maintained all the way through.
Dave, just before we come to this, you're talking 80 years now of civil war. I met in Yangon a very old man. I think he told me he was 93 or 94. And he said to me in deep sadness, I have only known 1 year where I felt safe. And it was 1946, when World War II had been won by the Allies. The British were still there. That was the 1 year in my 93 when I felt safe. Your perspectives?
Yes, sir. That's the perspective. I think Sean said it really well. It's basically, if my count, is 75 years of fighting. The longest running war in the world right now is Burma. Millions, 20 million people displaced easily over the years. And since the coup, which was 4 years ago, another 4+ million, maybe 4.5 million, just in these 4 years. Thousands killed. And, we're a small relief organization. We're a humanitarian group. We're not part of any of the militaries. But I've lost 75 of my guys killed, 200 wounded. And that's representative of what's happening all over Burma. Thousands killed. And I can get into it later. But what I see is two things happening now in Burma that are unique to its history from my perspective. One is the Burma military coming with a speed and a force I've never seen, supported by China and Russia. And the last battle I was in Pazang just a couple of months ago in Korea, we had 5 kinds of jets, Russians and Chinese, over us 18 hours a day and 24 hours a day, a Y-12 bomber on us. Drones, artillery, mortars, big war. Before, it was what I'd call low-intensity conflict. It's that way no more. It's all-out war because the Burma military is scared and angry, and they want to crush this. The second reason is because Russia and China, I think, have given unprecedented amount of military support right now to the dictators. That's the first new thing for me anyways, in terms of how the war's been fought all these years. The second one is good news. I have never seen Burmans and ethnic work together like they're working now, ever. I've never read about it in history. There was an 88 revolution of students. That was mostly students. But these are Burman housewives, doctors, engineers, actors, beauty pageant people that have joined the ethnics for democracy. And it's true, there's not a lot of coordination or necessary deep unity, but they are unified, one, against the dictators. Number two, for some form of federal democracy. So I see these two things happening, a unity I never saw before, at the same time, a military backed by Russia and China out to crush the opposition.
Well, thanks for that introduction. That's really valuable. And I think the thing I would say to listeners is, all we've seen on our news now is a horrific conflict in the Middle East. We've almost forgotten about Ukraine and Russia. We don't seem to care about what are the dreadful circumstances in Syria. And here in Myanmar, we've had the horror situation that you've been talking about, which has enormous humanitarian consequences for the people of the region and potentially massive geopolitical challenges for countries like Australia. And we're just not learning about it. So thank you for your time. A personal question to you both. Sean, if I could start with you, what's your deep interest? What drove it, your deep interest and concern for Myanmar and presumably for the people? I'd just be interested in both of you. What got you involved?
So for me, John, it was totally by accident. I met some Burmese people here in Australia when I was studying at university 30 odd years ago. And they came with such a compelling story, such a story of, hope amidst with desperation and terrible tragedy, but they were brave, courageous people. And I sort of fell in love with the whole Burma-Myanmar story. And I was an economist and working at Australia's central bank, the RBA. And I realized that I could use my economic skills to help my Burmese friends. They were part of the opposition movement even back then, 20 odd years ago. And then over time, I gradually just got pulled deeper and deeper into it. I fell more and more in love with the country and the people. And the more I knew about the country's economy, the more I identified the gap between its potential and where it was. And I thought, you know what, I can actually really help here by just really, doing as much work as I can on the economy. And through that, I got in touch with people like the former leader of the country, Aung San Suu Kyi, the winner of the Nobel Prize in 1991. I got to be friends with her. And then when it came about that she came into power, that's part of the problem actually, but when she did take up office in 2016, she actually said to me, Sean, you've been helping us all these years. Time to put your money where your mouth is in a really practical way. Come over here and help us. So from 2016, I went over to Myanmar and was part of her administration, if you like, as her economic advisor.
Well, Dave, just before you come to you and responding to that, Sean, I was in Yangon probably about 2016, I think, and they were sensing that perhaps the generals would let go and let there be some sort of election. And that resulted, of course, in Aung San Suu Kyi becoming sort of the leader for a while, some democracy in it all. But I was approached by three very impressive and warm and intelligent young men who were studying, and they just, in utter frustration, said, we think we're going to be given a bit of freedom. How do we build an economy? How do we build an education system? How do we build a judicial system? How do we get infrastructure rolling? How do we get a welfare system going? They were really imbued with a deep desire to see something better for their fellow countrymen and women, not knowing how to do it. And I remember thinking, my goodness, we've built all this up over the West over centuries, and now we're taking it so lightly it's in danger of falling apart. But they can see the benefits of civilization, if I can put it that way. I felt so deeply for them. Dave, you're a soldier humanitarian with an extraordinary story. You've been in all sorts of danger situations all around the world. How did you come to be so personally interested in these people?
Well, thanks, John. I want to key in on two things. First, what you just said is this yearning to make their country better. Someone asked me, why be involved in Burma? Well, there's many reasons, but one is they want us involved. They want to make a new country. They're so humble. Hey, help me make this a new country. Sean, come and join us. Sean joined the government and he paid a big price. He was almost killed. He was in prison. I was just praying for him. I never met him. I thought, who's that guy? He did this for love. And we do it for love. That's why I do it, because I have ashamed to say they love me first. Why would they love me? I'm almost nobody. So the way I got involved was I was a missionary kid growing up in Thailand. My mom and dad are still alive and serving in their 90s. And then I went to the U.S. Army as an officer in the Rangers and Special Forces. I heard about Burma. In fact, in 1988, in the student uprising, I was in the 2nd Ranger Battalion. And it was a contingency to go help, even then. A contingency because you always had these contingency. Of course, we didn't do anything. But anyhow, I got out of the military to serve God in a different way and was getting ready to go to seminary. And I got invited by the Wa. The Wa are one of the tribal groups in Burma. They are not part of anybody's circle. They have their own little fiefdom, and they have the biggest ethnic army. They were headhunters before, but a few were Christian, and one of the Christian leaders, who's a foreign minister in those days, came to Thailand. He asked the U.S. government for help. He said, if you'll keep the Burma army off our backs, we'll stop all our drug production, because they produce opium, heroin, and amphetamines. We'll stop all of it. But that's how we get money to defend ourselves from the Burma military. Well, the U.S. government, UNDP, was not going to do anything about that, at least not in that way. So he reached out to the missionary community. I got invited because they saw a picture of me with a green beret. That means Special Forces in America. And he said, is that it? Does the guy believe in Jesus? Yes. He must be a warrior. We are warriors. Send him. I got this phone call. I'm trying to get my wife to marry me. She said no. And I get this phone call saying the Wa foreign minister's in Chiang Mai in our house. He wants you to come. Like, who am I? But I prayed, and I told my wife to be, at that time, the no lady, I told Karen, I got to go. And I thought it was over. Well, long story short, we got married. We went to Thailand and then into Burma extra legally. And that means another way. And with the Wa, that was 1993. And then we learned more and more and more. And by 96, I went to Rangoon because my sister said, let's go see Suu Kyi. Okay. By then I was known by the government, and I was told I'd be arrested if I came to Burma. But I prayed, and I talked to my mother, who knew John Saisari, who was a senator in the Thai government who knew Suu Kyi. And they said, we'll help you set it up. So these women organized it. My sister, my mom, Dr. Saisari, that's how I met Suu Kyi. And I went and met her just 1 hour, 1996 in June. I was in her house there on Inla Lake, and she impressed me so much as a brilliant, humble, strong, brave lady. And at the end of it, I gave her my Special Forces crest. And in U.S. Special Forces, it says "de oppresso libera," which means free the oppressed. It has 2 crossed arrows in those words in Latin. And she said, aren't the things of war beautiful? And I gave her my Bible, and that I got for ordination. And she said, the Bible, I read it every day. You should know the truth. Truth will set you free. And she said, pray for us and get people to pray, and we need unity. Well, she inspired, she's such a wonderful leader. I love her and pray for her all the time to get out. She inspired me. A great leader is someone who can look at someone like me, no rank, and go, hey, I want you to do something. It's believing in other people, and no matter who they are. And she said, go do something. So we started something called Day of Prayer for Burma. And we started an ethnic unity attempt called Ethnic Nationality Seminar, where every major tribe in Burma came in. Karen State is back in 97 by now, before that happened. And we sent a message of support to her. She got dressed in a Karen dress by that drum in her house and read the statement back, agreeing. And that was the beginning. And that was kind of political, which I'm not much of a politician at all, but that was our attempt. And then out of that grew the Free Burma Rangers, because right after that happened, it was the 97 offensive. Burma Army displaced 500,000 people, Shan, Karenni, and Karen State, all in 3 months. And I thought, I'll help one person and they'll be happy and I'll be happy. There was no government behind us, not much of anything behind us. I just thought, I want to help. And ethnics started to join us, and we formed something, I got it right here, called the Free Burma Rangers, tiny little humanitarian group. That's how we got started.
That's a fascinating story, I have to say. Can we start to then unpack why the place is so dysfunctional? Before we do, just on that, Dave, if you could. So you were invited there as a Christian. I understand it's only 5 or 6% Christian. It's overwhelmingly a Buddhist country. And presumably that has a lot to do with the shaping of the place and the people.
So we started our organization not as a Christian organization or religious organization. It's still not. It's a humanitarian organization. I follow Jesus because he changed my heart. But we have Muslims, Buddhists, agnostics, atheists. My life was saved twice in the Battle of Mosul by an atheist who I love. And anybody can join us. Buddhist spirit worshipers, we have all kinds. Most of the leadership is Christian, but we have Buddhist leaders in our Shan teams, on our Ta'ang teams, or in our Arakan, and we have Muslim leader in Iraq. So in Burma is mostly Buddhist and then animist. Of course, animism and Buddhism is very mixed. It's hard to draw those clear lines. Christians are minority. In Kachin State, they're a majority. In Karenni, they're a majority. In Chin, they're a majority. In Karen State, they're a minority. But it kind of depends where you are. So where we are in the mountains, it's kind of a mix. It's mostly Christians and animists and very few Buddhists. The Buddhists are more down in the plains and in the Delta. And then, of course, Shan State is almost all Buddhist. Arakan is Buddhist. Sagaing is mostly Buddhist. Magway, most of Burma is Buddhist. But we work with everybody. We only have 3 rules to be in the Free Burma Rangers. Do this for love because nobody gets paid. You can't run if people can't run. And you got to read and write in some language. And we found real harmony. We've never had a problem with all the different religions working together.
And there are Australians, I know, working with you over there as well.
Yes, there are. And we have a flag. And so we're grateful. The Australians are everywhere. And I want to meet this Australian. But anyway.
Well, Sean, can we come to you? Give us an overview. How did a country, we've touched on this, that was seen as having great potential, was quite well off by the standards of the region, descend into this hellhole state?
So I think there are 2 deep-seated problems, John. Number one is the military itself. Myanmar's military was very much established by and trained by the Japanese Imperial Army in World War II. So I think most Australians will be familiar with the story that Burma was invaded by Japan, suffered Japanese occupation, and the military that emerged afterwards for Burma has its roots in a force, as I mentioned, trained by the Japanese Imperial Army. So many of the values, if you like, of that Japanese army from World War II inculcated into this nascent Burmese army. And that's what is still there all the way to the present day. So there's that problem. Then a second terrible idea arrived, and that is, so Burma got independence in 1948. Things were going quite well for about a decade. It was sort of like a lot of countries in that era, was struggling, etc., but it was moving roughly in the right direction. But then 1962, there's a military coup, and that sort of Japanese trained army, as I mentioned, takes over the government. But then, a second bad set of ideas come in, which is the form of a very doctrinaire socialism, communism, basically. And so Burma enters into a decade or so of something called the Burmese way to socialism, which was more doctrinaire than just about anywhere in the world. Probably only Russia under Stalin and then North Korea are its only real rivals in terms of the obsession, for the full sort of communist enterprise. So that then lasts for a few decades. And so we see this country that should have been the first to catch up to the industrial world in all of Asia, instead falls way behind until we get to 1987 and the country is listed as least developed. And so, so it's, I think that those 2 terrible ideas that come through, Japanese Imperial Army on the one hand and a very doctrinaire version of socialism on the other.
Just explain to me, what was the sort of Japanese ethos? So, and Japan is now a great ally. It's a great influence for peace and stability around the world. It's shown us what quality and manufacturers are, quite impressive in so many ways. We all know the story of the Burma Railway in Australia and the cruelty then. But what was it that came from the Japanese Imperial Army and their training of those people philosophically that then made them want to become communist? Because Japan was not communist.
No, indeed, John. So I think what was inherited from the Japanese side is a sort of contempt amongst the military corps towards the civilians and anyone outside the military itself.
Right.
And I think that contempt and that arrogance is still there. I think this, unfortunately, sort of merged, and as you say, the Japanese in World War II were not communists, but unfortunately, communism's great sort of centralization of economic activity and inculcating all power in a very tiny group of people meant that it sort of merged into that Japanese Imperial Army ethos as well. So you had this terrible mixing of two authoritarian creeds, if you like, into something that then became just so much worse because of their merger. And we really see that to the present day, so that the military that now rules Burma, they're just everywhere in every part of society, deep into the economy, and that has huge implications. It keeps economic growth down, as well as leading to all the human rights abuses that, unfortunately, Myanmar is now known for.
The poverty must be terrible if GDP's halved in recent years. I mean, I could see poverty everywhere there I think it was 2016 that I was there. It was dreadful then. Must be much worse now.
Absolutely, John. Yeah, so GDP per capita now in Burma is half of what it was when the coup took place in 2021. And the country was poor then, but it was growing. Now it's halved. Situation is desperate. In terms of the league table within ASEAN, Burma is now by far the poorest country in all of ASEAN, and is even poorer per capita than East Timor, which is still trying to join ASEAN. So, yeah, it's just a dreadful circumstance for a country that has probably more attributes as an agricultural producer, more resources, raw materials. It's even a place where there's lots of these rare earths. Myanmar should be right at the top of Asia, but instead it's languishing there at the bottom.
Now, you're both modest men, so you're going to be reluctant to tell me, but I want to press on this. Both of you, this is important. We need heroes. Both of you have paid very high personal costs for your interest in Myanmar. Dave, can I start with you first?
Yeah, I want to say something about I really like what Sean said, how he described it, and about the Japanese Imperial Army and the Burma military. The Burma military is to be respected in terms of a killing force. They are a killing force. They are tough. Like the Japanese, physically very tough, very disciplined. All this talk about lack of morale, it may be there. I have not seen it. There's some people that give up. Mostly those are conscripts. They are tough. They believe in it. And it's almost like a religion. It's hard to separate the military from Buddhism to their idea of state. It's all tied in like this. It's like an encompassing institution that we don't have in the West, really. But the Japanese had it, very similar. And where the military is superior to everything else. And in the front lines, very tough. I respect them a lot. I don't agree with them, but I respect them. I never underestimate them. They're tough. And so I just wanted to back that up. And also what it means is they can kill with impunity. You don't have to worry about being a prisoner. You're not going to be a prisoner. You'll be tortured. You're going to be killed. And if you're a woman, you're probably going to get raped. It's just how it is. And they're going to burn things down and smoke them. You can see it in the airstrikes everywhere. There's not one medical facility that I know of in Karenni State, just for example, not one that hadn't been bombed. There's not one school that I've seen that hasn't been bombed. Even the monasteries, anywhere they think there might be opposition. Forget any kind of rule of war. It's almost like anybody not us is enemy. So this is I think this was their own idea, but I think codified or put together by the Japanese, who were a very effective fighting force. So that's, I wanted to back that up as from what I see. In terms of myself, the price we paid, when this podcast started and I listened to you and Sean, I don't know, when the first Sean's word, I wanted to start crying. If I think about the people I know that have been lost, I've lost 75 of my guys and a couple of my women. They're not mine. We're like family. We trained them. Some of them, they're Christians. We baptized. I did perform wedding ceremonies. I know all of them. I started out being 10 years older than the intake. Now I'm 40 years older than the intake. And they raised my kids. My kids run. These are brown people, not white people. My kids run to them saying auntie and uncle. They were raised by these ethnic people, mostly now Burmans. And the cost is, I cry. If I think about it, I'll cry every day. I like one thing I learned in seminary. You can live well with sorrow. You can't live well with shame. And so we live well with sorrow because we have love. And sorrow is about love. But to me, that's the biggest personal cost. I'm grateful I have not lost my wife or my kids. 2 months ago, we were in Karenni State. My son was with me. They're all in university now, but he was with me on school break in the trenches taking out wounded. And right in between Pete and I, we were 6 meters from each other, 3 meters from each of us. One of our top team leaders was killed. Boom, right in front of us. And my son, and an airplane's coming in, make another dive. He didn't go for cover. He's trying to save this guy. And so I'm thinking I could lose my son any minute. And my daughters are back at the casualty collection point. One's a nurse working on people, one's giving blood. And my wife, who really hates war, she's back there going, ah. But anyway, the cost that I felt we've had is I've been wounded 5 different times, 4 in Iraq and Syria, and 1 time in Burma recently. But those are kind of minor. I've been fortunate. The biggest loss is my heart. It's not just our 75 personal friends. It's the thousands of people. I get a feed every day from our teams, and I don't think not one day goes by I don't see a civilian kid or a mom just drenched in blood from an airstrike or mortar strike. Not one day. So I think that's an emotional cost. But like the people of Burma, it doesn't make me want to quit. It makes me cry, and there's resolve. Right after the coup, there was euphoria, elation. We're going to change things. That's gone. That's gone. In its place is sorrow and fear and a resolve that we're not backing off this, not because of pride, because of love and all those that have paid the price. So I'm grateful. I could even speak. We've been in other countries next to Burma. We've been arrested. I'm really grateful those countries let us go and continue. But I have not paid near the price of most people. I haven't paid the price that Sean paid. I haven't been in their hands. So right now, the biggest price are the people of Burma, and one of them in particular, Aung San Suu Kyi. And my prayer for her is that she survives this and is set free.
I take it you need hope to carry on?
Yes.
You couldn't do it without hope?
No, I have hope. I have hope because this is my story. Because every time I say, Jesus, help me, sooner or later I feel something. And because of love, I have hope. While you're alive, there's hope. And I can't imagine doing anything else, even if we lose. We get together as a team, and sometimes we have conflict. We have 18 different ethnic groups in FBR alone, and religions and everything, and personalities, And we get together and we say, we're going to forgive each other. We're going to tell the truth, resolve our conflict, forgive each other. Nothing's going to break us on the inside. They can kill us from the outside. They can't break us on the inside. And when we commit to do that, that bond of love, even when we lose and have to run away from a place, that bond is precious. And I believe right now, when I see the Burmans especially joining the ethnics and bringing all their talents to the ethnic world, and that integration, they are making Burma right now. And again, maybe we'll lose it all. Maybe I'll be dead. Maybe this thing will fail. But what I see now, they're not building Burma in the future. They're doing it right now, whether it's in hospitals and clinics, or, for example, the IEC and the CRINI, Burman and ethnics working, how we're going to administer. They're doing it right now, everywhere they can.
Well, thanks for that. Sean, you too. Tell us the price you've paid.
So I think probably the most obvious one, John, is that after the coup, I was arrested, charged essentially of being a spy. In fact, really the central allegation was that I was the spy handler for Aung San Suu Kyi, who was a puppet of mine, was the allegation. It was completely absurd. But essentially, I was charged with espionage in Myanmar as a way of getting to her. So both myself and Aung San Suu Kyi were put on trial. Also, the leading ministers of the civilian government at the time as well. And then I spent 2 years in the prison in awful circumstances and so on. So I guess the price I paid was that, but also the price of my family. I think above all, my dad, my wife, my daughter. I think the cost was borne by others more than me, to be honest, because I think sometimes when you're the person at the center of whatever the drama is, you know more about what's going on for you. You're less anxious about it than loved ones around you. But I'd like to echo Dave's point, John, which is just to say that however much I suffered, it was nothing compared to my Burmese colleagues who were in immeasurably worse circumstances than me. I had an entire government, the Australian government, behind me, tirelessly trying to get me out. I had the US government trying to get me out. I had the British government trying to get me out. So, I had all of that behind me. My Burmese colleagues had none of that, and yet they protected me. they gave me their food ration. At one point, I was in the notorious insane prison in Yangon, and I was even in the area of the prison called Death Row, the death row part of the prison. And the death row prisoners, because they got some extra bread for being on death row, but they gave the bread to me because they thought, oh, this Australian guy, he's probably sick of rice. Let's give him our bread ration. And these sorts of gestures just took place all the time. I had one particular Burmese friend of mine called Kin Mong Shui who looked after me to an incredible degree. He was later bashed and kicked to death by the prison guards of this same insane prison. And part of the reason they attacked him was that he was my friend and that he'd helped me. So, just to agree to Dave's point, I'm very much motivated, I think, by the love and courage and compassion of my Burmese colleagues. And that, despite whatever costs have come to me, they're sort of, as I said, immeasurable compared to them. And their love, their courage and so on just inspires me. I remember for a brief period in the prison, I was thinking, you know what, when I get out of here and go back to Australia, I'm just going to leave everything. Leave it all behind. I'm just going to sit on the couch and watch TV. That's it. And then I think that resolve lasted about 3 hours and I was back in there just anxious to have a go back. Which is more or less what I've been doing since I came back to Australia.
They are remarkable stories. I salute you both. 650 days, as I understand it, before you were released. Horrendous. But, the culture that I now live in and watch and worry about here in Australia is one where people turn them inside out over little slights because somebody looked at them in an inappropriate way or whatever. And we have very little resilience, and part of it is we have no heroes. We don't talk about our heroes anymore. And if you don't talk about your heroes, you don't realize that people have had to fight evil things, that people have had to lay down even their lives to create a better world and a safe society. And there's a place for heroism. We're not hearing it. And I think we're paying a terrible cost for it. Dave, you've been in quite a few war zones. It's an amazing story. There must have been times when you thought it was all over for you. Is there anything that particularly stands out? My understanding is that you had a particularly tough experience in Iraq, seeking to actually literally save civilians who are under fire.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wanted to say something about heroes. I've thought about that. And I don't think any of us can be heroes because that's a state of being, which we're not always going to be heroes. Right? Sometimes we're selfish. Sometimes we're cowardly. Sometimes we do things we're ashamed of. But we can be heroic. We can do heroic things. And what Sean did was heroic. He didn't want to go to prison, but he took that risk. And what he did outside and in and now out again is heroic. And that inspires me. But I don't want to put him up on a pedestal. He's a hero all the time. He can't be. He's a human. So to me, only God is the one that can be. To me, Jesus is my hero all the time, but I want to be heroic. I'm glad Sean is heroic. I'm glad you're heroic, John. I'm glad people around me are heroic because then I'm inspired to, okay, I'll get up and do it again. I chickened out this time. I didn't do as good as I could last time. I'm going to try again. And so in Burma, it was the same day the Russians invaded Ukraine. I remember it's 24 February 2022. I was in Kearney State. We had lost so many of our guys because I was in the 17th day of a big fight from southern Shan State down into Loika and Mobia, Dimoso. And that particular day, we'd lost many people. I was up at the front trying to get the last civilians out and some of the PDFs that didn't get the word to retreat. So I'm running back and forth, bullets everywhere. And I could see the Burma army up ahead of me and they're shooting at us and I'm trying to get people out. And all of a sudden, a jet fighter shows up. It's a Russian jet, but it's piloted by a Burmese pilot. I can see the cockpit, the light in the cockpit. I couldn't see his face because the light shined up. We're looking at each other. And he drops a 250-pound bomb. This is a true story. 12 meters from me. I know that's true because where the bomb crater is and where I was. It was a ditch, though. I jumped in the ditch. I got a concussion. The shrapnel went over me. Two of us in the ditch, but one guy tried to jump to a different ditch and he got it in the head and the neck. And Everything's open. He's alive for like maybe 1 minute, pouring blood. So I jump up, I grab him, I'm dragging his body because we don't want to leave his body behind. I'm dragging his body, and the plane circles and comes back and lines up on me again right in the street and shoots his 20 millimeter cannon. Doop, 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 and he's just blowing everything up. My medic goes to the left and gets badly wounded, but he's not going to die. I'm there, and I was a rock this big and 3 trees in front of me. I got my friend who's bleeding out. I can't stop it. It's deep inside his chest too. I know he's already dead, but I want to take him. And I lay there, I'm laying like this, and the plane lines up, and I just pray, Jesus, help me. And I turn my body, like, what's my attitude? Not this attitude. I don't know why I picked this one, and they missed me. And one cannon round took out 3 trees in front of me and hit whatever's left of it, hit that rock, gave me a big concussion. I couldn't hear for 3 days. My head was pumped up like with air, it felt like, for a month, but it didn't kill me. And I got up, picked up the body again, and started running. My medic's still alive. We kept going. And that day, it went on and on and on. We had more to do. We put the dead body away. We had to get more people. This went on for about a month. I never stopped. And I just want to insert in there, one particular night, I said, and I've been in war now for 30-something years. In Iraq, many battles. I never got tired. I mean, I get biologically tired, but I never got tired. I never shirked. I never stepped back. I remember one night I said this to God, God, if you want me to get up tomorrow, you need to help me because I'm out of courage. I'm scared. I'm so sad. It makes me cry. Think about it. I'm so sad and I'm just tired. I'd never had those 3 things come to me so powerfully where I felt like I couldn't do anything. And I just lay there and I said, okay, God, if you want me to be functioning tomorrow, you got to help me, Jesus. I woke up the next morning. I was fine. Wow. I kept going. But, in the Middle East, you mentioned it. We had many battles in the Middle East. I faced ISIS 2 meters. Like he shot me there. And and I said, we're not militia. We're not. But in the Middle East, I carried a weapon all the time. I didn't have to. I'd be dead if I didn't. But we'd be treating casualties and ISIS would run down the street because they don't care with a suicide vest on, shooting at you saying, Allahu Akbar. Now you could just die. But I didn't feel that was God's plan for me. I don't have any philosophy of war. I really don't. I just say, Jesus, what do I do? I've raised my hands and given my life before. They didn't kill me. Not ISIS, but Arabs. They didn't kill me. But this time I fought back, like point blank, 2 meters, just looking at each other in the eye. I'm shooting him. I killed him. He shot me in the arm. I lived. I had that happen numerous times. I had a grenade land 4 yards from me, 3 guys attacking me. I shot each of them one by one. And I'm Mr. Bean, man. I'm not James Bond. So I want to say, even though I'm military trained, I know this sounds strange, but God helped me. But every time I killed somebody, I didn't kill that many people, but I had quite a few, many cases of it. I prayed for all those guys. I'm not better than them. They just were on the wrong side doing evil. I'm not better than them. I would pray and I'd close their eyes and try to dress them up. And I remember the Kurds look at me like, how come you'd honor that dead body? It's evil ISIS. They rape people. They almost killed you, man. I said, because we're just human and they're somebody's son and they're wrong, but I'm not better than them. And I do that for the Burma military. I pray for them too. I do for my own sake. So I don't want to hate them. And I know they're humans. So the last story I'll say is, because you mentioned it, saving people. We had multiple times, 7 different times in the Battle of Mosul where we went under fire and got people out, which were all miracles. And we didn't do it alone. We were praying for us. I had this unsecure iPhone. I talked to the American military. I've been out of the Army 20 years by then, but I had friends who were still in that trusted me. I called in smoke and airstrikes and all, true story, with this phone. And they did it. So saving this little girl that was trapped by ISIS, they shot everybody else in the family. They shot 7 kids. And another thing, I'll try to be quick, but people said, well, you guys are superheroes. We're not superheroes. There were 7 kids alive when I first got in that battle site. 7 kids. We didn't save it. A superhero would save them. We couldn't. They all died. 1 was left alive hiding her mom. We called in smoke. I got an Iraqi tank commander to drive his tank. We ran behind it. We grabbed this kid and she's alive today. And we did that for love. And we were terrified. And the last thing I'll say about that is, if whoever's listening and you're scared to do something, just ask for love. Because your fear won't go away, but it'll go down here and then you can do something.
I am not quite sure what to say to that, because I often do think to myself, would I have the courage to do the right thing when the chips were really down? maybe I'm a coward because I've not put myself in that line of duty, but you two men have, and I can only say what you have to say is profoundly moving and illustrates for us what greatness is in a life, in a time when many of us, frankly, live pretty small lives. So I salute you. Can I pivot, lest you get emotional or feel you've got to say, no, you're not heroes, when I think you are heroes? I want to pivot to China and Myanmar, in particular the China-Myanmar economic corridor. And Sean, you'll know what that is. So the Belt and Road Initiative, we've all heard a bit about it. It seems to me that it's a different thing in different parts of the world, but it's all about the Chinese seeking to influence people and indeed gain control over them. What is the Belt and Road Initiative in the China-Myanmar economic corridor, and what is China's interest in Myanmar? We need to know about this.
We sure do, John. It's a great question, mate. So the major portion of the BRI in Myanmar is this gigantic pipeline, railway, road that will connect a Burmese port called Jiaopyu on the Bay of Bengal all the way up to China's Yunnan province. And it's a project that's meant to allow China to avoid the Straits of Malacca and any sort of action of the US Navy to deny China from energy from the Gulf. So it's strategically incredibly important. And they brought this in. Yep, they brought this in over a decade ago. The whole arrangement was unbelievably exploitative for Myanmar, for Burma. It was a project that didn't make any sense at all from the Burmese side, but made all the sense for China. And yet, because this deal, when it was first done, was done by Myanmar's military and China, basically Myanmar agreed to take on massive amounts of debt to build this thing, even though, as I say, didn't make economic sense at all for Burma, Myanmar, but it would have imposed great debt on them. So this deal was done. When I went over to help Aung San Suu Kyi after 2016, when she took up office, this was priority number one, was to renegotiate that and go to the Chinese and say, look, the past military regime signed this deal. It makes no sense for Burma. It burdens the country with massive debt. She, being an incredibly courageous and very convincing person, she went to Xi Jinping and turned the deal around, turned this $10.8 billion debt diplomacy disaster into something that Burma could use and just removed a lot of the, negative aspects of this deal. So that was done. This was back in 2018. After the coup of 2021, it's back. So here we are in 2025. Now Myanmar is saddled with this massive debt. This project is going ahead. It's all about China, but Myanmar is going to end up paying for it. It's just a dreadful circumstance, but I'd have to say it's just one of a piece, because the relationship of China to Myanmar overall is unbelievably exploitative, whether it be this particular port project, but whether it be the whole issue of rare earths that I mentioned before. So China is extracting massive amounts of rare earths from Myanmar. In fact, about 40% of all the rare earths that have developed in China actually come from Myanmar. And it's mined in ways that, have no safety standards or anything. The rivers become poisoned. It's all, done in the worst extractive way imaginable. So, but the whole relationship is basically exploitative. And then to see on top of that, the way that politically and militarily, the way that China props up this military regime, which, is betraying the Myanmar people, but supporting China, who then agrees to support the military, is just an awful relationship. To me, it's the worst relationship that I know of in the world, strategically.
So you're saying it's not only terrible for Burma, it's potentially very threatening as China seeks basically to dominate, presumably, the Pacific region and ultimately beyond, that militarily this could be extraordinarily dangerous.
Absolutely, John. I think it's part and parcel of a China that's trying to make itself invulnerable to pressure, particularly from the US and so on. So, yeah, this has import great beyond simply Myanmar. This is about China's relationship to the entire region and the entire world, because what they're trying to do via their relationship with Myanmar, is making themselves invulnerable. So it's incredibly important. It gets no publicity at all. And yet, it's absolutely critical, I think, to the designs that China has for the broader Indo-Pacific.
It's almost a modern version of the Burma-Thailand Railway, where so many Australian prisoners of war were so brutally treated as Japan sought to make itself harder to deprive of vital materials.
It most certainly is, John. And one of the terrible ironies of this is many of the same physical locations that Australians suffered during World War II, etc., is being used for this project as well. So, yeah, there are all sorts of parallels in the two situations.
Sean, from an economic and policy perspective, where's India fit in this? Because they neighbour a long way. Now, they're hardly benignly uninterested in what China does, and they will presumably have a great interest in what we've just been talking about. What is the relationship between India and the junta? Should we be worried about it?
I think we should be worried about India's behaviour towards Burma, John, because there's India, the world's largest democracy. I think we thought initially that they would be a bulwark for Burma's resistance, for the people fighting for freedom. That's what we would have expected. We would have expected perhaps India to have a negative attitude to China's growing dominance over Myanmar. Unfortunately, though, it looks like that India is really beginning to sidle up to Myanmar's military and be vaguely supportive of them. It's incredibly disappointing. It's not anything like the links between China and Burma's military and Russia and Burma's military, so I don't want to go that far or anything like that. But one would have thought that India might step up a bit more than what they have done.
Dave, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, just small. First of all, India, I agree completely with Sean. We would have fought. But, India has its own long-standing insurgencies in the eastern side of the country that border Burma, which seem to be their priority of keeping those down. And I remember just two things. I used to go through India, and I hope I can go again. But I remember we were training relief teams on the India border between Burma and India, as well as in India and Aizawl. And at that time, Than Shwe came to meet Modi. And I landed the next day. This is a true story. Like, who are we? The chief of police calls me into Aizawl and says, you got to leave the country. Why? Because Modi just sent the order because Than Shwe told him Free Burma Rangers are here. Well, we're the Good Life Club. We didn't even use the name Free Burma Rangers. Good Life Club is my wife's program for kids. That's all we were really doing. He goes, I don't care if you're the Good Life Club, the Bad Life Club, the Worst Life Club. You've got to go. But he was a Zomi himself, a Chin. He said, okay, let's work it out. So we didn't get arrested. We finished our training quicker and we got out. But I thought, wow, they responded that fast. And we're such a tiny group. And so then just last week, I'm in the US right now, but I was in Thailand. I met a member of the Indian Special Forces and we were talking. And he talked about how he had fought Kachin rebels. Why are the Indian Special Forces fighting Kachin rebels? They're not enemies. And I don't know the reasons. My point is, though, is Sean's point, they're not helping the pro-democracy movement very much. Now, there's some low-level people that allow people to move back and forth, and I'm grateful for that. But I want to encourage India, whoever listens, we love your country. Please stand for freedom for this country. The second insight I have, along with what Sean said, is this corridor, this Belt and Road, there's a pipeline that runs from the Gulf all the way up to China through Yunnan, and it goes through Shan State and close to Kachin State. And I remember crossing it with my family, all walking. We walked for 2 months, going from Kachin to Shan back in 2012 and 13. We're crossing this with the Ta'ang. Ta'ang are a tribe in Burma, also called the Palau. But I asked, what happens with this pipeline? And they said, the Chinese government told us, Ta'ang or Palau in Burma, if you want to make money, you protect this line. And they pay us money every month to protect this part of the pipeline through our territory. And they told us, if something happens to that pipeline, There will be no Taang left in Burma. We'll kill everybody. Dead serious. And so the Blong are like, okay, we cannot blow this up or let anyone blow it up. We're all going to die. That's how serious China is about that. And I remember meeting the Wa leaders way back in 92, 93, meeting Bao Yu-chang, who's still kind of the de facto leader. I think his daughter or son is more in charge now. Anyways, Bao Yu-chang and Zhao Nilai, they said, we are a stick in the hand of the Chinese, the Wa are, the UWSA. We're a stick in the hands of China. If democracy gets too strong, we'll keep it in place. If the dictators get too unruly, we'll keep them in place. What else are we going to do? This is that perspective. And the last thing I'll say is, in World War II, there was a death railroad running through Tan Bia Ziad, through the Pagoda Pass, and into Thailand. And it was a death railroad, and we said, never again. Well, about 10, 15 years ago, maybe 15 now, there's a gas pipeline, runs right along there, the Yadana field, right along there into Thailand, run by Unocal and Total, American and French companies. Thousands of people were displaced. Nobody did anything. It was basically the death pipeline, just like the death road. It happened again, some places right next to each other. And so I'm grateful that Sean, brought that up, and I hope people around the world care. This is not only human rights, that's the most important thing. A human rights slaughter, it's a geopolitical danger to the whole world to let China run Burma.
I'm surprised. I was very surprised to learn that Singapore is a massive investor in Myanmar. What's Singapore's interest? And should the people in Myanmar be concerned about their objectives?
So the interesting thing about Singapore, John, is that much of the money, in fact, is not Singaporean. It's actually Burmese money, so-called round tripping. So what happens is many of the crony businesses that surround the military, they're earning millions and millions of dollars through illicit activities that include narcotics and these latest internet spam centers and goodness knows what. A lot of that money finds itself in international financial centers, round trips, and comes back sort of washed back into Burma. So the role of Singapore used to be that a lot of Burmese money went out of the country, then came back in via places like Singapore. Singapore, however, has actually got a lot better. Since the coup, Singapore actually has reversed a lot of that. And a lot of that dirty money now, in fact, is not there anymore at all. It's gone, unfortunately, to the Gulf countries. That's where a lot of the money laundering is done these days. So, yeah, but tracing the money is incredibly difficult because obviously these criminal syndicates and these cronies in Myanmar, they're very careful about where they send their money, and they try to disguise it as much as they can. So that's both a real problem, but it's also a bit of an opportunity for people like me, because you can actually, if you do trace the flows of funds, you can really find out some interesting things.
Wow. The world is not as it seems. Now, if you come to America again, these are troubled times, and America's foreign policy is a little harder to read than it used to be, but nonetheless, they're very, very important. In February of this year, Secretary of State Rubio told Panama to reduce Chinese influence around the Panama Canal or face consequences. They've been prepared to send some very tough messages, because Panama then, in fact, did not renew its Belts and Road initiative. It dropped it. That was a good thing, surely. What about the US and this particular play by China with infrastructure? America, is it involved? Is it paying attention? Can it influence the outcome?
Very quietly behind the scenes, John, America's been really good on this. So back in the day that I mentioned, where Aung San Suu Kyi went to Xi Jinping and said this project was unacceptable, this big pipeline and all that in its present form, the Americans were incredibly helpful. So Myanmar's one of it's a funny sort of relationship there in Washington. Many Congress people actually have taken on Burma, Myanmar as a bit of a cause. And the great thing about it, it's always been bilateral as well. So both Republicans and Democrats have always been pretty good. So the extent to which there's been international pressure on Burma's military regimes, it's very much been led by the US. So I think on this issue, it's one of those areas where the US, I think, can stand tall compared to, many countries. These days, of course, everything is so complex and uncertain and all that. I'm still very hopeful, though, that America will do the right thing and is doing the right thing when it comes to Myanmar. But it's something we have to work on. People who care for the country, I think, constantly advocating for the country. I'm only just back, actually, from Washington, where, again, I did the rounds of Congress, the rounds of State Department, people in the administration, etc., just reminding them how important Burma is and how important their support has been down the decades.
Because it's not only the humanitarian arguments, of course, and the interest of the Burmese people, if I can put it that way. It goes to the issue of the desire of China to dominate. And that's something, given the way they behave, I can't imagine why anybody'd want to be dominated by China let's get this right. We're not having a shot at the Chinese people here. It's always important to say that. It's the communists in Beijing. When you look at what they did in Hong Kong and you look at what they're doing now under BRI and other initiatives, debt trap diplomacy and what have you, the warning signs are all there. The then Premier of Victoria, Dan Andrews, actually looked as though he was going to take up Belt and Road initiatives in Victoria until the federal government stepped in. Do you have any general comments about Australia's vulnerability to China's expanding grip?
Oh, I think Australia is enormously vulnerable, John, and I think people here are incredibly naive about what China's motives really are. I think the situation of China in Myanmar is the sort of situation that could come to other countries as well, but we're seeing it play out there. And to me, China's involvement in Myanmar is a real warning to countries like Australia and many others as well.
Yeah, I think, of course, we love the Chinese people, most of them, but a government that will do to its own people what China does to its own people, not just the Uyghurs, to anybody. It's like how a mother and father treat their kids will tell you how they're going to treat you. And right now, this government will kill and imprison anyone that they disagree with. How much are they going to care about Australians or Americans or Filipinos or Thais? Nothing. The government. I think it's extremely dangerous. And I can see it. And I'm glad you were just in DC, and I'll send you an email who you talk to. I'm going to DC next week. And I've been going for 30 years, actually, and usually have lots of friends in Congress that really do care on both sides of the aisle. And I don't know what this new administration's going to do, but I remember talking to one individual in the State Department who said, we really don't have a well thought out policy right now on this, which way to move. And it made me wonder, maybe China has said very quietly to the U.S., don't think about it. We could have got that front. I don't know. But my appeal when I'm going there to talk with state, DOD, and Congress, people in Congress, is help the people of Burma because they matter. They count. They want to be helped. A democracy in Burma is good economically. It's good. These rare earths, you'll have a chance to get them actually, not just be under the fist of China. And to me, most importantly, is the human and spiritual factor. At the same time, it's a geopolitical, crucial location. You let China control that, you're in big trouble, not just in Southeast Asia, all over the world. And in addition to that, it's not just the Chinese. It's primarily the Chinese. It's also the Russians. The Russians just signed an MOU with the Burma government to do a land bridge from Burma across into Thailand, which cuts out the Straits of Malacca, or at least maybe it won't equal it, but it's another way that if it happens, that's another bridge that for example, the U.S. 7th Fleet can't control. And again, it's not because Americans want to control things. We want to live and live free. And the China government is not joking. They are not joking. And so I believe, one of my messages to the U.S. government is it's in American interest, even if you don't care about people, it's in your own interest to support the democracy movement in Burma right now.
Dave, you spent a lot of time in the US Special Forces, as we said in the introduction. You're watching your homeland, your native land, at a time of great local tumult, that would be fair to say, and people worry about the reliability of the president and what he might think today and do tomorrow. But you've mentioned the Hill, Congress, the Senate. Where is the, if you like, the willpower? You know, as a fighting man, that it's conviction and willpower and courage as much as resources and gear and kit that determine the effectiveness of a military. Where's America on both fronts, really? Willingness to stand and to try and maintain some global order, to be the cop, if you like, if there's been for so long, and is it backed up by capability and a commitment to finding the resources at a time when the American debt is, frankly, pretty frightening?
Right. Well, in terms of the military, this administration, this is my opinion, as an ex-professional soldier, this administration has gone the right way. We had things that made no sense, that were not even true. We had two standards to do the same job. It's like going to medical school and going, well, if you're a man, you have to know everything. If you're a woman, you have to know half the things. It makes no sense. We don't do it in any other part of life. You don't play professional football because you're a certain color. You play because you're the best. And our military, I can say, this is not political. This is just military hard fact. We lost our way. And of course, there's places for women. Your FBR is full of women, but never pretend that you're going to have the same strengths. We're just not the same. And I think that fundamental truth has come back in our military, which has caused enlistments to raise. Many tough young guys would not join our military. They didn't believe in it. That's changed. I believe, of course, it's not perfect. That's a major improvement. It's one of the few things I agree with. But anyways, it's an improvement. I don't know where, and I think this administration is different than others. I asked someone the other day, should I meet someone in the National Security Council? And they said, no, they don't do anything. So I think this administration, I'm praying to meet the right people. You need to meet Marco Rubio, or you need to meet Trump. I almost think it's like that. And if somehow you can touch their heart, and especially Trump, if someone can touch Trump's heart and make him realize this is important, he could do something. And the military has the will to do it. To me, I don't think you need a direct military solution to Burma. I really don't. I think if you support the people there in certain ways, I think they can do it. And diplomacy will have its role. We don't want to fight China. We don't want to pick a fight with China, but I think there's ways. And so to me, when I'm getting ready to go, and I told my friends, I don't want to meet the same people I meet every time, because nothing's going to change unless we can meet Rubio or Trump, or maybe there's someone else that can turn that key. I don't know who they are. I don't have to meet a name, but that's how I felt. I don't know about Sean, about your experience, but I thought, I don't want to meet someone who just agrees with me. I want someone who can walk up. And I don't think it's in Congress. I think Congress and Senate under this administration, they have their role, but they are not going to make a decision. Trump's going to make the decision, and whoever influences him. So my hope is I can talk to somebody that will influence him to make a decision. Otherwise, I feel like this is a waste of time to go.
Sean, as a very proud Australian and someone who regards himself as unbelievably fortunate to have grown up and served in this country, I despair that we just seem to be switched off to all of this. We're not a serious country anymore. There would have been a time when, quite frankly, we would have carried the international clout to do just what Dave has suggested needs to be done, to go to the President of the United States and the relevant players, State Department and Defence and so forth, and say, hey, we've got to do something about this. We don't seem to be in that space anymore.
We're not in that space anymore, John. You're absolutely right. In fact, when it comes to Myanmar, basically Australia is hiding behind ASEAN. We keep on asserting that this is a problem that ASEAN will fix, and yet ASEAN has demonstrated over and over again that it has no fix at all to the situation in Myanmar, and yet that fiction is something that we hide behind all the time. It's very distressing, and the ironies of someone like me, of Australians going to Capitol Hill, going to the Trump administration to get something done rather than here at home, I think just speaks volumes to that exact absence of Australia on this.
Dave, can I ask you as we wrap up then, if I may, I think in the comfortable West today, a lot of young men are really questioning how can I be a man? How do I, if you like, recognizing that it's a simple fact of life, I have testosterone, I want to go and slay dragons in pursuit of good. I want to make a difference. I want to be a hero. What would you say to them?
Well, I'd say if you're Australian, you're pretty tough people. You got great rugby and cricket, and the Australian SAS is one of the best forces in the world. It just is. And there's a couple of reasons why. One, the most important reason is because they're Australian. And second, they have to do it all. You don't have a Ranger battalion and a Delta and special forces and this and this and this. You got one thing has to do everything. And I've been so impressed with the Australian SAS because I worked with them. And one of your sergeant majors came over. It was a sergeant on my team that I led. And what a great guy, Gary Kingston. If he ever watches this, he's retired now. But you have a tough guys. That's not a knife. This is a knife. And and tough ladies. You don't want to surf against an Australian lady. She'll smoke you. And some of my favorite singers. So what a great country. But I think I was talking with a friend of mine who was in a Ranger battalion also. And I said, in war, we have three big enemies in war. First is pride. Pride. I'm better than you. I'm more important than you. That kind of goes away if you stay in enough war and it's peer-to-peer or they're stronger than you. That pride kind of goes away. Then there's fear. There's fear because you're going to die. And then the last is hate. You really hate the enemy. And the problem with that hate is it usually doesn't end with the enemy. It's the enemy, and there's those people, then it's family, and then it comes back to you. It can. And so to me, one of the greatest gifts God gave me in the Battle of Mosul was number one, to love the Iraqis. I didn't even know who they were. I indiscriminately love Iraqis. Like there's something wrong with me or right with me. If I see an Iraqi, I don't care who they are. I love them. That was a gift. Second, to know the difference between justice and revenge. Revenge is all about hate, getting your rights back, but you don't care what happens to the perpetrator. Justice is, yes, this perpetrator needs to be punished for their good. And to me, I had to pray and say, Jesus, I gave up revenge, and he gave me love. And I had to pray that many times. It didn't stop me from fighting ISIS. It doesn't stop me from shooting back at the Burma army, which I've done very few times, but I've done it. One time we had a wounded guy shot right in front of me, and the Burma army is right there, like 20 meters. They just didn't see me, and they're trying to kill him. He'd been hit 4 times. And I just emptied my pistol at them and ran and got him. It doesn't stop me from fighting them, but it stops me from hating them because I want to be their brother. And so to a young man or young woman, I would say, don't be led by comfort, by fear, or by pride. These are killers. Comfort, fear, and pride. Don't be led by them. Be led by the opportunities God gives you, and then be bold. To me, I would phrase it, be bold in the things of Jesus, humble in things of people. If you do that, you're going to have a chance to test yourself. And when you're too scared, God, give me love. And nothing done out of love is crazy. Nothing done out of love is crazy. And so that's my encouragement. And people like Sean, oh my gosh, 2 years, and he did it for love. And people like you, sir, and that you're putting all this information out, you're bold to tell the truth and stand for something. So I guess that's what I say. Don't be led by comfort, fear, or pride. Be led by the opportunities God gives you right in front of you. And they may take you across the street in another town in Australia, or it may take you around the world.
Final question for you both. Can love mean anything if there's no justice?
I don't think you can have love without justice or justice without love. And I don't think without those two, I think you have to have mercy too. Because justice, love, and mercy, they all fit together. And I think that's the only way.
I think that's right, John. To me, the love I have for the Burmese people is why I pray for justice for them. And at the same time, I think that justice will deliver them the love that they so richly deserve for all their courage and compassion down the decades.
Well, I've been doing these conversations for 7.5 years now, and we've had hundreds of millions of listeners, but I don't know that I've come across two men who have been able to so move my feelings, and I hope our listeners, as you two have today. So I can't thank you enough. And all I can say is God bless everything that you have done and that you do in the future.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, John.